Lea,
indeed.
welcome to Build.
Thank you.
Look at this gorgeous album art.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm like, wow, I've never seen it that big before.
Well, it's an incredible album, and
Thank
let's
you.
start there. Let's start with Blurred Lines. The title track is the Robin Thicke song.
Yes, it is the Robin Thicke song,
You
but
give it-
interpreted differently.
You
so-
give it your own spin.
Exactly.
What makes your version different than Robin's?
Okay. I think there's something that happens when a song like Blurred Lines is given a different treatment and interpreted, I think, by someone of the opposite gender. It seems less creepy, I think, to put it mildly. I think it's less creepy when a woman sings it. I mean, the first version of hearing a woman sing it was, I saw it on YouTube, and there was this singer, and a friend of mine had alerted me to it, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. So we kind of ran away with that too. And yeah, and I think someone on Twitter was like, why is she even singing that song? And why did she name her album with that title? And it's like, for me as a singer, you kind of take something and you turn it into something else and you reinterpret it and you give it a different spin and it means something totally different from what it was originally, which is a fun thing to do.
I love it as the title of the album because there are so many different kinds of music.
Exactly. The
on this.
lines between like genres kind of gets blurred, and that's why we've titled it that.
Yeah, it's very jazzy, but
Yeah.
the songs are not jazz songs.
Not always,
You do incredible
no.
John Legend cover that I love.
Thank
then
you.
give it your own spin. Can you give the audience an idea of some of the other tracks that you love on
Well,
the
we
album?
have Manhattan, which is it's a classic standard with Larry Yerman also quoting other New York songs within that arrangement. And then we also have, let me see, I may need an album to figure it out. But we have a song that was from a musical that I don't think it ever got to Broadway, but Audra McDonald had originally sung. And so we also do that. And that is actually a song my husband constantly asks, is that in your repertoire for this concert?
Yeah.
And when I tell him no, he's so disappointed. But he'll be coming back to New York in time for the 54 Below engagement.
Good. And this
So
was recorded
he
at
can see it,
54
yes,
Below,
and
right?
Yes, this was recorded last year at 54 Below. So he can watch pretty much every night and get to hear that song. And that's probably the one song out of my entire repertoire that he asks to hear.
Is the One Direction song on the record?
Yes.
Yeah, Story of My Life.
Yeah, and that one I have to thank my brother for. Because he sent me a message late one night and says, there's a song that I want you to do. And I'm like, okay, who's it from? And he's like, One Direction. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And it's become one of my favorite songs to sing. I mean, I'm a coach also on The Voice back home in the Philippines, and I assigned that song to one of my guys, and that kind of just shot his rating up, and so it's a very special song to me.
What has being on that show been like for you? Is
It's
it as big of a
crazy.
phenomenon
It is.
there as it is here?
It's nuts. It's extremely popular, especially when we have the kids version. The regular season, it's like, it's a normal singing competition, but once you have children, everybody just wants to see these incredibly talented kids. And they're the real deal. I mean, there is nothing put on or fake about any of the talent that gets to come on the show. They're totally for real. And it drives us crazy just how talented they are. And makes me proud as a Filipino to be able to say, look at these incredible kids. And then one of them, who had won in a previous season, like I think our second kids season, she was just on one of Steve Harvey's TV shows.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the one where he features like really talented children. And I got to see a clip of it, and it was just nuts. She's just incredibly talented.
Well, I bet you can relate. I mean, you were performing when you were really young.
Really, really young.
You started Annie at 9?
I started Annie at 9, but
before
that wasn't
that,
the first show
yeah.
that I ever did.
Let's talk about your roots and when you were
Okay.
just a little wee Lea Salonga.
Okay.
And how you got started. How did you get discovered, and what was your first real performance gig?
Well, the discovery happened by one of my cousins who was very active in Repertory Philippines, which is a theater group back home. And I was singing at family parties, and so she tells my mom, "Can you please get her to this audition? They're looking for kids." For
And
The
how
King
old
I."
were you at this point?
I was 6. And I auditioned and had a very smart-ass mouth already. And so was not intimidated at all by the director who was sitting in front of me. And she can intimidate just about anybody. And after I was done, I guess I shouted to my mom, who was sitting at the back of the house and trying to hide. And I asked her, Mom, how did I do? And so the director is like, you did fine. Now get off the stage. Yeah. And I got into the show,
What show was that?
The King and I.
Right.
I was the kid with the big speech at the end of the show. I was Princess Ying Yaolak.
You have done basically every major Broadway role I can think of. I just went on your Wikipedia page and it was like theater credits. Scroll, 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 scroll. I mean, starting with Annie and then all the way up through Allegiance. And now you just finished doing Fun Home in the Philippines, where you took on the role that Judy Kuhn originated on Broadway. I would have loved to have seen you in that role. And it was like, you know, I actually went on and looked up flights so I could just see, is there any way I can get there? Because I feel like
it's a schlep from here.
Yeah.
To go to Manila.
But I considered it.
Well, thanks for considering it. Thank you.
Are you going to be performing that song in any of your concerts? No, why not?
No.
Days and Days.
Days and Days. It's like it's one of those songs where it works in context. And you kind of need to see the rest of the show happen before we get to that point. Before we get to the point where she's sitting at the table with her daughter, and we kind of sort of took the scene like from the actual graphic novel, where we just sit at the table and she just lays everything out to her daughter, and we're not moving. I'm just sitting this whole thing. I'm singing the entire thing sitting down at the table. And so the challenge is, how do you make this an emotional experience without moving? So, yeah.
Did you see the role on Broadway?
I did. I saw Judy, and it was in the round. So, and I think for every single musical number, you have to favor an audience surrounding you, 360. But there was one bit of staging that I really loved, which was for Telephone Wire, where Beth Malone is singing with Michael Cerveris sitting beside her, and the whole thing just very slowly turns around, and they're not moving. I'm like, this is the best thing that I think I've seen on Broadway as of this point, where it was just incredibly simple, where it was just them like replicating a car ride.
So intimate.
And her just trying to muster up the strength to talk to her father, and the moment never happening, and how that must feel that you can't get that moment back, because soon after that, he's dead.
Right. Well, that's a good representation of sort of what all theater is, right? Living in the moment and taking it all in. I had the opportunity to see you several times in Allegiance, your most recent Broadway show, which has been coming to movie theaters for a day or two here and there.
Yeah.
Have you gotten to go and see it?
I haven't seen it.
How do you feel about seeing yourself on screen?
I don't know. I think I feel comfortable when it's an animated figure, because it's just my voice, and it's not my face, and so I can criticize the vocal performance, but I don't have to worry about how I look, and I try not to be too self-conscious about it. So when I see myself, it's like, this is weird, and I'd rather not. But I would actually like to see Allegiance. I mean, I've been getting a lot of good feedback from people that have gone to watch it, and it's important as a historical piece, just because of what it represents, and George Takei's passion, his obvious passion project, and all of us became really passionate about it because of him.
And it also has such relevance today. I'm so glad that it's...
I've been trying to avoid saying stuff like that, but I mean, because I don't want, I don't want Allegiance to necessarily be the harbinger of doom.
Oh yeah,
but,
no, not at all. It has an opportunity to really teach. I
exactly,
think.
But I'm hoping that people actually look at it and go, well, there are signs that seem to be pointing in that direction, but we're not at that point yet. So things can always be reversed, and you can always learn from what's happened in the past in order to not repeat. And that's a lesson that history can teach everybody.
Yeah. Since you mentioned being animated, I know it was a dream of your life to be a Disney princess, probably as it is for every little girl who grows up with
here's
Cinderella.
the thing about the whole Disney princess phenomenon. I think that the Disney princess phenomenon is a much more recent thing, because I don't remember necessarily having my life's desire to be a Disney princess. I mean, I was a kid living in the Philippines. It's not something you necessarily aspire to. Because it's not something that's on your radar. It wasn't something that I was thinking about, and then I get to voice for two of them. So that kind of becomes it's a wild thing for that to happen.
How known are you for being associated with Disney? Because I know you're also like a Disney living legend, and you've appeared on all of these albums, and you've sung at Disney events and stuff. How often do you get recognized for your work in Disney versus your stage work or your television work in the Philippines?
In the Philippines?
Or no, I mean like I was thinking of like The Voice.
Okay.
Or
I think now, of late, I think people recognize me for being one of the people in the red chairs and for The Voice. And my husband had a really keen observation. He's like, that show is aired on a channel called the Filipino channel called TFC, which is an affiliate of the station that airs it in Manila, which airs The Voice in Manila. So maybe that's why your concerts are doing well. Because
I understand you're selling out like crazy.
Well,
so anybody who wants to get tickets, like get them now, because the shows are going to sell out.
I'm hoping so. I mean, so far in the tour, I mean, we've already done 4 concerts and we've sold those ones out. So I'm hoping that the rest of the tour is the same.
The concerts that you have coming up right now
Yeah.
are different than the concert that's on the album, right?
Yes. I mean, the only time that this same concert will be done will be at another Feinstein's, but that's in San Francisco.
Right.
So it's the show is pretty much exclusive to the Feinstein's Cabaret Rooms.
And the only other place to hear it is on the album.
Right.
And what can we expect from the tour? You're heading off to California tomorrow.
I'm heading off to California tomorrow. So we do Cash Creek, and that's a band show, which is a little bit different, where we can include a whole different repertoire of music. And then we also have orchestra shows. I have the Phoenix Symphony one coming up. I have an orchestral concert in Winnipeg, and an orchestral concert in Provo, Utah with the BYU Chamber Orchestra, I think. And that concert is going to be replicated in the Philippines at the end of May. So I have like 4 different repertoires that I need to kind of keep a track of.
Wow.
There's piano only, there's the 54 below, the Feinstein's repertoire, let's just call it that. Then there's orchestra, and then there's band. So a lot of the songs do cross over from one to the other, but there's also some music that's only available in one type of concert and not in the others. So I kind of need to have this running list of songs in my head. So there's always this need to review everything.
I'm so impressed by how often you're working. I mean, I want to know.
I'm happy.
Are you? Because I wonder when you rest and how you.
Oh, I do.
How
Don't
you
worry.
escape from it.
I do. I'm just glad to be. I'm in my mid-40s now. I'm 46, and I'm just glad to be working and happy and grateful. And I'm constantly reminded. I have a husband who's extremely grateful on my behalf as well, and he always says, you know what, just opportunities don't always come, so let's just be happy and grateful for the ones that do come, for either a Broadway musical or a show in Manila or concerts or The Voice. The Voice has been just an incredible gift. So I'm just happy that it's still coming. And because there's going to be that time when all I'll hear are crickets around me. So I'm trying to appreciate all of this as much as I can while I can.
I'll believe that when I see it. I think that you're going to be going like long past.
I certainly hope so. I mean, there are other roles in musicals I like to do that the older I'm getting, that I'm kind of starting to eye them now.
Okay, let's talk about that. I know you've talked about Ava Perón before.
Yeah, but I'm like, no, I don't want to work that hard
You're
anymore.
over it? You're over it?
I just don't want to work that hard in a show anymore. I mean, I've done Kim in Miss Saigon, and it's like, there's now a 21-year-old playing Kim. I'm like, Oh, I do not envy you right now
Oh,
because
she's so
she's
good. Even
incredibly
Nobazada,
talented. She's just so talented and smart and spunky and very. She's a feisty girl. But I'm starting to look at things like Mrs. Lovett.
Ooh.
And Sweeney Todd or Joanne and Company, and I mean, and just being able to tackle Sondheim more, just because of how smart and urbane and erudite the lyrics are, and how much life experience you can kind of have to dig into in order to interpret those things just right. But it's a challenge, but it's the older I'm getting, the more I'm appreciating it.
What's your favorite Sondheim musical?
Ooh, that's hard. I mean, I'm going to see Sunday in the Park with George tonight, so that could very well be my answer. But as of right now, Sweeney Todd.
There's an incredible production playing right
I
now
know.
where they actually serve you meat pies.
I know.
So if you have time, when you get back from the tour,
I'll probably
find a way to see
while
that.
I'm at 54 Below. If they do like a matinee of something, then I have to go.
I was reading some stories about when you were on Broadway in Miss Saigon, and that there were some crazy mishaps that happened backstage.
Always a crazy mishap.
That you almost got crushed by a piece of scenery.
Oh no, that wasn't me.
It wasn't?
That wasn't me. I did not get crushed by a piece of
No,
scenery.
almost got crushed.
No, not even. Not even close.
So-
I was not close to that piece of scenery. But
You remember when the
happened-
piece of scenery
this happened in
in
London.
question? Okay.
This happened in London. And the way that the sets of Miss Saigon come on, they come on these wagons. So because of the Drury Lane being so cavernous, just if you think the Broadway is huge, that one is like the backstage area is like twice as big.
Wow.
So there's nothing intimate about the Drury Lane. But there is a wagon where I Still Believe is sung. And then there's another wagon where the Ho Chi Minh statue is kind of mounted on. But the cable jumped a drum, so it just kept moving forward. So there were people that were in the middle of these two wagons. So everybody just had to try and hightail it, get out of there. So they ended up on our wagon, and this was during a dress rehearsal. Thankfully, we were not in front of an audience. So we were able to troubleshoot every possible safety issue for that production. And then we had to cancel our first two previews so that we could have another dress rehearsal, not doing the scenes, but doing every single quick change, checking every single set change cue to make sure that everything was safe, that there was no way that anything could fail. And then we, did an actual full-on dress rehearsal with all those safety checks, and then did our first preview on the 6th of September.
The story that I heard is that they started calling you Ms. No Problem because you would not be shaken, and that just whenever something went wrong, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, is she okay? Is she going to want to go on?" And
Like,
that you
"No
just
problem.
say, "No problem. Let's
No
keep
problem."
going. It's good." Which I think is about the best reputation that an actor can have is someone who's just
to be
goes with the flow.
reliable and to not be phased. I mean, that's the thing about live theater, that I think there are audiences that go to previews just hoping that something goes wrong.
Well, you never want anybody to get
No, you don't want
hurt.
anybody to die. You don't want injury. You don't want any of that. But you're kind of there hoping that something goes amiss.
Different. Yeah, I
Something
mean,
minor.
I do.
Yeah.
Did you hear about what happened at the first preview of Groundhog Day the other day?
Did something happen with the set?
Yeah, the set stopped working, so they just did a concert version.
Oh,
And
that's
it was like the
awesome.
greatest thing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it was
I wanna see that.
fantastic. And
totally wanna see
you know,
that.
I love the opportunity to see theater that reminds us that it's happening right in front of us.
Right.
Because sometimes when it's so flawless, you forget you're not at a movie.
Right.
And I have definitely had that experience watching you. You're always so present with your fellow actors. I know that a lot of people say listening is the most important thing about acting. Would you
Right.
agree with that? Are there other
You have
tips
to be
you would
to
give?
be in the moment. But here's the funny thing about doing live theater. You have to be like in the moment and totally immersed in this reality that you've created. But you kind of still have to have a toehold on actual reality in case anything goes wrong. And you kind of need to have another eye or ear kind of tuned in to what's happening backstage in case there's, somebody gets injured so you kind of need to start thinking of what to do, either to help cover it up or to kind of make transitions seamless. And it's just one of those magic things. And I gotta, like, I have to give props to every swing nation at every Broadway theater for keeping the audiences as clueless to whatever's happening. I mean, it's like, what is it like? It's like a duck swimming. Somebody gave me this analogy. It's like watching a duck on a lake swimming, very serene above the water, but underneath it's crazy. So that's kind of what doing theater is like. Everyone on stage is complete. It's this serenity and not wanting to break focus for the sake of the audiences that are there to escape their own reality. But stuff that happens backstage, sometimes there's the panic, like swings going on mid-show because somebody's injured. And we've seen that happen in Allegiance. There was an actor who, after a whirlwind, like a cruise or a tour or holiday with her family, came back in a state of major jet lag. And I think midway through the show, just was almost passing out.
Oh my gosh.
I know what jet lag is like. And it's
I bet you do.
terrible. It's one of the most awful, awful things to have to be on your feet and doing a show because you're feeling lightheaded. You're not sure if you can actually stay upright, much less do your double, triple pirouettes and flips and whatever. And so our female swing had to, like, hurriedly put her makeup on, get her wig on, get her costume on, and just get in there. And without anyone in the audience able to pinpoint when it happened. So
All
it's like
theater makers
all
are
the
heroes.
swing nation must give all of you props.
Yeah.
Every swing on Broadway is a hero.
And every tech crew member, every
Yes.
house manager, every
Everyone
usher.
in every Broadway theater is that makes the magic happen. They are just nothing short of heroes.
Here's to them. We have time for a couple of questions from the audience.
Sure.
Hi, Lea.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I need to take a moment just because I'm such a fan, such a nerd. You're amazing.
Thank
your
you.
career has been incredible, and your voice has. I've grown up with it. I mean,
thank
of course.
you.
So you've had a lot of different experience through many different mediums, but you just made your return to Broadway with Allegiance. I just wanted to know what that was like to return to the stage, to the Broadway stage, and what you were feeling, and when you, I think it was at the Longacre.
Yeah,
what
we
it
were
was
at the
like-
Longacre.
What it was like to sort of be on the stage for the first time.
Coming back to Broadway is always a special thing. There's really nothing like it. It's the knowledge that, for example, that every guy in the tech crew, every stage hand, every prop master, there's the knowledge that they have your back all the time, and they always do it with so much calm. It's ridiculous how calm these guys are. And you can see them working really hard, but it's so that you don't panic, they can't either. And dressers and all of that and all of the backstage stuff. I mean, that's makes it fun. I mean, performing on stage is always fun, and getting to perform in front of great audiences that come to the Broadway shows. But a lot of it's coming back to that backstage camaraderie and family, and forming a family with a new cast of people. It's that's the attraction, I mean, the performing is great, but there's all the other stuff too that people don't always get to see.
On a related note, I did promise someone on Twitter I would ask you when you're coming back to Broadway.
I don't know.
Should we call
don't
Mr.
know.
Sondheim?
Calling anybody that wants to cast me in a show. I mean, I would, like, without even blinking, I would totally come back.
I'll get on the phone as soon as we step off stage. In the meantime, we have another question.
Hello. How are
Hello,
you?
I'm well, thank you.
I just wanted to say I went and
I
saw
see the face.
Allegiance,
Ah.
and I happen to have your face with
Awesome.
me.
Oh, you're a fan.
Yes,
He's a fan with a fan.
the fan. My question is, what is the biggest difference between doing like an original Broadway cast recording and then going and doing your own album?
When I do a Broadway cast recording, or any cast recording for any country, because the Saigon one was the original London one, I have to remain faithful to a character, and I have to remain I mean, people will know my voice anyway, but I have to do it not as me. And I have to stay true to the character I'm playing, which means I really have to be watchful of anything extraneous that just kind of might creep in, which would not be right for Kim, for example. I mean, I think there was one performance in London where I kind of went a little far to the left, and boy, did that creative team just let me have it. And so
What does that mean, go a little far to the left?
when things like ad libs happen, or you do stuff that's not really true to the character you're playing, they will rein you back in.
Yeah.
And they will let you know they're not happy, which actually I appreciate, because sometimes you need that. And so when I went in to do the cast recording, it's like, this is the character I'm playing, and I have to remain faithful to her. But when I do this, I have a lot more freedom. And so I can interpret one song one way today, for example, if I'm doing, and I'll interpret it in the show another way the next day. And they recorded this over 4 performances, so who knows what interpretation ended up on the CD. And that's fine. And the thing is, you really, as long as you get to the essence of the song and your intent is exactly what you want it to be, then there's a lot of wiggle room for interpretation.
How much do you have to adjust your voice between characters? Like, how much time did you have between Allegiance and Fun Home? And how much did you have to sort of shift where your voice is, where your mind is, to get from the character in one to the character in the next?
Thankfully for Fun Home, Judy Kuhn laid down this template of who this person is and just where everything sat. And so I just kind of took a lot from her.
One Disney princess to another.
Yes, Pocahontas to Jasmine. So I listened to her a lot, and without trying to copy, I was just trying to get as much of the essence of this character in how she interpreted it, and see how much of that would fit into how I would then interpret it. I tend to belt more, so I just do. So
we love you for
it. So I mean, she was like, for example, if she decides to shift into like a head tone for like that whole days and days and days and days, I'm like, oh, I can still belt up there. I guess I'll belt up there. So and I figured, as long as what I'm doing is true to the character I'm playing, then it's good. But back to your question of shifting the voice, they put Allegiance in the upper registers of my voice, and Fun Home tends to be in more chesty, alto, but at times shifting to a head and a larger, bigger, deeper sound. It meant that I didn't have to warm up as crazy.
That must have been nice.
Because my voice tends to naturally sit lower now that I get older, which was right for Helen. So I needed to really be careful when I warmed up, because if I warm up really, really well, then I sound like a chipmunk.
Well, I bet you are the best sounding chipmunk we've ever heard. We have time for one last question.
Hi, Lea. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So with all this talk about returning to Broadway, I have to ask, what is your dream Broadway role?
You can't say Mrs. Lovett because you already said that.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, how do I answer this question differently? I don't know that there is a dream Broadway role now, because I'm starting to distance myself and move away from a lot of the ingenue stuff, because I'm not of that age anymore. I could probably get away with playing somebody in my 30s, in her 30s.
You definitely could.
Thank you. It's hair color and eating clean. Seriously. But also Asian don't raisin. So there's that. There's that too. Yeah, I'm beige and I'm happy. But I'm starting to, the older I'm getting, the roles that I'm looking forward to playing are older women, and women that have lived life. And so I'm not really interested anymore in playing these pretty young things, because it's like, you've not lived yet. It's much more interesting to play somebody that's had a life and has seen a lot. And it's just a much more varied and deep and rich playground to immerse oneself in.
Well, I cannot wait to see where you go with that. I want you back on Broadway in a new show every season if I had my way. And maybe people can get on social media and suggest some of those deep, meaty
Yes.
roles for you.
That would be fantastic.
Ms. Lea Salonga on Twitter.
Yes.
Let's send all the ideas your way.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. We'll see
Thank
you on
you,
tour.
and thanks everybody.